Hey everyone, Diamond Ambassador Megan Milakovic here, and I am so excited to share with you guys today just a little bit more about my journey from emerald to sapphire and diamond. And if at any point I sound like I'm super out of breath, it's probably because I am very, very pregnant. But I want to walk you guys along that timeline and share with you just some valuable lessons that I learned along the way that helped me make the jump, so that hopefully this will help give some insight for you so that you can make the jump from emerald to the top. But the very first thing that I want to share with you guys is that keep in mind, everyone's journey is going to be different and unique. My journey is going to look a lot different than yours, than your sidelines, than your uplines, than anyone else's journey, because you are such a unique individual. And so as you're hearing these different tips or lessons or things that we did, I want you to really pay attention to the spirit of the things that we are sharing. And it's not necessarily always so specific to the exact task or the exact book or the exact podcast that we were listening to that helped us to get from A to Z, right? So keep that in mind as you're hearing these different journeys and lessons from emerald to sapphire and beyond. So for me, my journey started, I actually had a little bit of a slower journey. It took me about 5 months to go silver. And then from that point on, I drew my line in the sand and we went emerald 1 year later. And so because I had such quick growth to emerald, I thought that I was going to have super quick growth, like within a year, to diamond after that. So my timeline kind of looked like from silver to emerald, it was a year. And then from emerald to diamond, it was 2 years after that. But along the way, right, that sounds great. But along the way, after I hit emerald, I lost rank for almost a year. And I had determined in my mind, after we hit emerald, when I showed up to convention that next year, no doubt in my mind that I was going to be a diamond. Have you ever had a big lofty goal like that and you thought, by this time, I'm absolutely going to be at this rank, right? And then it not only did that not happen for me, but I had dropped back in points. So I was going the wrong direction. It was so defeating, but there's hope, because then a year after that, we went diamond. And so along the way, after I hit emerald, there was a lot of self-sabotage that happened. And I actually didn't share this part of my journey for a very long time because I was so embarrassed about it. I thought people were going to think that I was a fraud, I just was like a one-hit wonder. I hit emerald in a year and then I could never do it again. And there were all of these different things that were going through my head, all of these imposter syndrome and sabotage and things like that. But one really, really important thing that I learned after emerald, as the sabotage started to happen, as my points started to drop back, I had to be honest with myself. And this is probably the biggest lesson that I learned, and that you're going to need to learn along the way too, is that you are not where you want to be because of some kind of self-sabotage that is happening, right? Or else you would be at the place you want to be. And so we all experience these moments of self-sabotage. But what I found is that so many times we just want to blame somebody else, right? It's so much easier to just point the finger and say, well, if our team was doing this, or if so-and-so was doing this, or blah, 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 or my situation was different, or whatever you want to fill it in with, whatever reason you're telling yourself that is the reason that you're not from, you're not farther along or where you want to be, right? We have to learn to look internally and be completely honest with ourselves about where is this self-sabotage coming from? Or why do I keep bumping these lids? What is actually happening here? And I'm gonna share with you what the lesson is for me that I learned, but my lesson might be different than yours. And so, but what I want you to take away from that is, the only reason that I was able to identify that was because I was being 100% truthful and honest with myself. And unless you can be 100% truthful and honest with yourself about what's really going on, what thoughts are really happening there, you're not going to be able to progress forward in a way that is going to be sustainable, because you're going to keep bumping up against that lid. And we call this an upper level limit. If you have, this is like the top book I will recommend to you guys. It is called The Big Leap. And if you're a person of faith, replace universe with God and you will be all set. I actually just finished reading this book for like the 6th or 7th time because it is so good. And every time I'm in a season of growth where I know I'm probably going to start to sabotage. Like right now we're building my husband's leg and I'm like, I know I'm going to hit sabotage. We're in another season of growth, another season of momentum. It's going to come and I need to be able to identify what is happening here. So through reading that book multiple times, through lots of counseling and just honest conversations with people around me and self-reflection, this is what I came up with. I was believing a lie that you could not be a great mom and have a really successful business because I never wanted to work. I am someone who, when my husband and I got married, I told him I'm never going to have a job, that I want to stay at home and raise babies. And that's what I was doing before Plexus. And then all of a sudden I had this Emerald team and I had a job. Like I had to show up. I couldn't just not show up, right? And so all of a sudden I started feeling all this burden and pressure for something that was such a blessing for our family and was actually immensely helpful. But in my mind, because I believed the lie that you couldn't have the best of both worlds, I started sabotaging after we hit Emeralds because I hit a lot of success in my business. And then I thought, okay, well, it's my home life is just going to tank, right? And so there is a beautiful way for you to be able to have both, to have a thriving business and a thriving home life. I truly believe that Plexus offers that, but I wasn't believing it at the time. And so it was through counseling, it was through that self-reflection, it was through me being honest with myself about where I was at, what lies I was believing. I had conversations with different people who I really trusted their opinion, and we had raw, honest conversations, like tears, all of the things, and I was able to just share where my heart was, where I was really at. They never shamed me for the thoughts that I was feeling or the things that I was going through. And so be very careful about the people that you have these intense conversations with, because their voices matter, right? So make sure that you are seeking wise counsel in that, not just somebody that's going to jump in a pool with you and commiserate. You want to be talking to someone who is going to help bring you up, who's going to help elevate you out of that situation that you are in so that you can progress and grow. So for me, that was a huge lesson. Another huge lesson that I had to learn, once I identified that was my limiting belief, and once you are able to identify what your limiting belief is, then you can start to do something about it. So at that point, my points had we hit Emerald and then they went down, 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 down. I finally identified my limiting belief and then was able to start the journey of my points going up, okay? I had to stop the downward momentum, pause it, and then had to roll that ball back up the hill, which is hard, you guys. In those seasons, in the trenches, that's the time that people don't see necessarily the work that you're doing. And so there's a lot of behind the scenes things. And I know that Robin Sullivan has talked about this before. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes personal growth things that need to happen and leadership growth that needs to happen that people they do not see what is happening there until all of a sudden you start hitting this success. Like when I double ranked Sapphire and Diamond, all of a sudden people wanted to know what I was doing. Well, it wasn't what I was doing that month that we double ranked Sapphire Diamond. It was what was I doing in the 2 years between when we hit Emerald and Diamond? Like what did that journey look like? Okay. And so that was when people weren't banging on my door to figure out what I was doing in my business because they didn't see anything incredible happening. But what I will tell you is when I finally made that shift, right? And this is the second lesson, huge lesson that I learned, was taking real ownership for what was going on, right? Not blaming anybody else and just realizing, hey, like I was playing the victim card here. And so that looked like I was doing a training with Preston Pugmire, and I remember this, I will never forget this lesson, okay? So I was cooking dinner, the kids were crazy, and my husband had just come home from work, and I had all this homework that I needed to fill out before our next coaching call. And one of the questions was, when have you played the victim card in your life? And by victim card, I mean, when have you blamed other people for the situation that you're in, right? I'm not talking about a real victim situation here. I'm talking about when we have just been blaming other people, playing the blame game. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to do all the things and I'm super stressed out. And I started yelling at him and I said, Phil, I cannot fill out this homework until you tell me, when have I played the victim card? Can you just give me an answer? And he was like, he looked at me and he goes, Megan, you are literally doing it right now. He's like, you didn't plan your day accordingly. You waited until the last minute to fill out this homework before your coaching call. And now you're stressed because you know this is the craziest time of day with the kids. You're trying to cook dinner. They need you. I just came home. All this stuff is happening. And that's when you're deciding that you are going to do this. Like he basically was saying, like, I was creating my own chaos, right? But I was blaming it on everybody else. And I thought, oh my goodness, like I have played the victim card so many times in my life, in my business, in all of these situations. And so learning that lesson of, I can't play the victim card anymore. Like I have to take ownership of what is happening in my life, of what is going on, and not trying to have somebody else give me a quick, easy answer. So as you're on this journey from emerald to sapphire and diamond, you might be wondering, well, I just wish that somebody could just tell me what to do and I would do it and then I'd be there. Or just tell me what to think and then I would be there, right? But it's not going to come from somebody else. It is going to come intrinsically from lessons that you are willing to learn, to when you're willing to have your eyes open. When we do coaching calls with people, the only thing that they are never allowed to say is, I don't know. They can say to us, I am unwilling to see it, or I'm unwilling to go there. But the truth is that we always know where the sabotage is coming from. We always know what's happening. But so many times we just turn a blind eye, we play the victim card, and then we're like, I don't know what is happening. So if you can take full ownership for what is happening, right? Then you can move forward and you can start to progress, okay? So some other things that I did on my way from emerald to sapphire, and also I wanna share this part, I feel like this is really important. After I lost rank for almost a year from emerald, I determined in my mind when we re-ranked emerald, I was never, ever, ever going to drop below that ever again in my business. Right? That was just a line that I drew. This is something that I was determined to make happen. And I will tell you, to this day, I hit emerald points within the first week of the month. And I have never gone below emerald points again from that initial time that we re-ranked, and then we just kept going. Okay. It doesn't mean that I always had the highest points, but it does mean that we never went below those emerald points again. That was something that was really, really important to me. I was determined to rebuild sustainably and that we were going to keep growing. And so to give you a little more idea of timeline, right? So in 2020, my points were sitting in that February, we're sitting at around 1,700. By June of that year, we went up to 6,200 points. Okay, so there was massive jumps, massive leaps. And I understand that it was 2020 and that we all saw a lot of growth happening in that season, but not everybody saw that massive amount of growth. And I really attribute that massive amount of growth to what was happening behind the scenes the 2 years before that hit. And so I'm going to share a little bit more. I shared some of those lessons, but I'm also going to share some of the other things that I was doing along the way. So in the meantime, during that, I was pregnant and had my third baby. I'm now pregnant with my fourth, but I had my third baby. And that was one of those things that I was so worried about. I thought, oh my goodness, like, here we go. I'm not going to be able to build my business to the top. Like, I'm just in a crazy season of newborn and life. And also in the middle of that was COVID, and when we were living out at my parents', like my family 5 was living out in my parents' cabin, is not designed to hold 7 people, okay? So it was mass chaos during the season that we hit sapphire and diamond. Literally the month that we hit sapphire and diamond, like the afternoon that I hit sapphire, because it was a week before diamond, as I always said, I just wanted to blow right through sapphire. And that's exactly what happened. I didn't ever imagine it would happen that way, but it turned out really cool. Like we had somebody pack up a moving truck for us. My husband went and picked it up that week. Like, it was coming to us that afternoon that we hit sapphire, and like was getting stuff unpacked into storage. because we were just in the midst of chaotic, of moving, of all the different kinds of things, you guys. All that to say, that was the most chaotic season of our lives ever, and that's when we hit Diamond. So I want you to know that if you are in a crazy season, you can also still achieve your goals, right? But it's about what's happening up here. So some things that I did during those 2 years, right? I invested in a lot of counseling, because there were so many personal things that were coming up for me that was affecting my business, right? I did a lot of self-reflecting, a lot of just intrinsically asking myself, like, what is going on here? And just being honest, right? Some other things that I did is I was willing to make what I call short-term sacrifices for long-term gain, okay? And right after I had my baby, he was only he was 8 weeks old. And I went out to Utah for a leadership retreat. And I had determined in my mind, because I wasn't able to go to convention that year because I was literally giving birth, that I was going to invest in something. I needed to be around like-minded people. So I went to this leadership retreat. I had to fly on 3 flights out to Utah, then stay in a hotel with my baby, my 8-week-old, by myself, and then rent a car and drive 2 hours to where this retreat was, okay? And then drive that back, fly 3 flights back. To say that it was inconvenient is an understatement, but it's not about like the money that I spent on that retreat. It's not even about like all of the, what really it's about is that I was willing to do uncomfortable things because I knew that's what was going to help get me to where I wanted to be. So maybe that's not for you. Maybe all of that traveling and all of that with a baby, like that might not be your season, or that might not be your thing, but figure out what do you feel like is going to be that thing that's really going to help you, that's going to push you outside of your comfort zone, that's going to make it uncomfortable for you. And I will tell you, I probably missed half of the speakers that were at that retreat because my baby was nursing, or I needed to get up or do whatever. But it wasn't about necessarily the speakers. It wasn't about any of those things. It was about my mindset going into it and what I was willing to receive and take out of it. And I feel like I got exactly what I needed out of that, even though it wasn't the full package, right? It was the community, it was the speakers, it was what was I willing to see and hear while I was there. So that's the same thing for you. Like, it's not going to be, and I do believe in investing in yourself, right? But I'm never going to put a dollar amount and say, well, if you invest X amount, then we can guarantee that you're going to have this kind of results. That's not the way that it works, right? But a lot of times it's when we're investing in ourselves, we put a value and a price tag on that, and it's like, I'm willing to show up differently because I just invested in this big time. Like, I had to have other people watch my other kids, I had to book flights, I had to do all this different kind of stuff and then pay for the training. So like, that was a big turning point for me, just of mindset and growth and things like that. So I don't know what that specific thing looks like for you, but inconveniencing yourself for a short season is always worth it. That's what I have found, right? It's not going to be like that forever. But for me, like showing up and traveling to be with my team, that was really important. I'm so glad I did that before 2020, because then we could only see each other on Zoom. So I took my baby everywhere. I went out to Ohio. I went out to New Jersey. It was literally like planes, trains, and automobiles, me traveling everywhere. That kid was on like 20 flights before he was 9 months old, okay? But I didn't let that be a reason to stop me from moving forward. I just had to get creative, and things looked a little bit different. So that was that training piece was huge. And then I went to Jewel School, and it has changed and grown so much since I went. In 2020, it was February, and I had to bring my baby with me, which was not ideal, but I did it. And after that, that's when the whole world shut down, and then my points skyrocketed. And I'm not saying that Jewel training was the thing, right? And if you're sitting there like, oh, well, if I could just get to Jewel School, then my whole business will change. Well, it wasn't about that. It was about my mindset while I was there, right? It's about the conversations that I was looking to have. It was about the things that I was willing to see. And that's what's so important. It's not necessarily the books that I read, the podcasts, the trainings, all that kind of stuff. Although seriously, get to corporate trainings because they are phenomenal. But that's not what it's about. It's about your mindset as you're heading into those things and you being in the right frame of mind to see the things that you need to see, to uncover what's going there, to be able to learn those different things. That's what's really, really going to be important. And so, and what I would say is during that crazy season, especially I had a nursing baby who was up all the time. And like I said, we were living with my parents during COVID because we moved and it was just insane. Okay. And I look back at that time and we had so much fun. Like, be able to have fun in the midst of the craziness. If you can't have fun when things are like massively chaotic like that, it's going to be miserable, right? So you want to be able to have fun along those seasons. But I was very protective of my mindset. And what I mean by that is I was very protective about things that I allowed in, people that I allowed in, who I talked with. And also, like, I would wake up in the morning, I would put a podcast on or a devotion on to start my day off with something right? I'm like nursing my baby, laying back down, listening to that, starting my day with gratitude. It's all those really simple things that it's so easy to do, that it's so simple not to do. They talk about that in The Slight Edge. That is something that I would really encourage you to. Those really simple things that have to do with your mindset that you're like, I could do that tomorrow, or I could do that later, or it doesn't really matter. It does matter, and it makes a huge, huge difference. And so those are some of my top lessons that I want to share with you guys, that I just want you to be honest with yourself about where you're at. Be willing to take full ownership of why your business is where you at, why your business is where it's at, why you keep hitting these upper level limits, right? Why you keep hitting this self-sabotage. Because once you are willing to have your eyes open to what is actually happening, then you can start to move forward and you can grow more, and you can grow in leaps and bounds. It doesn't have to be slow if you don't want it to. You can grow in these massive big leaps because of the things that you have been doing and setting stuff up along the way. And the last thing that I will say about, just kind of like encouraging and lifting up other leaders, because it's a big jump from emerald to diamond or emerald to sapphire. And so as you're doing that, what I want to encourage you is pour belief into your leaders, right? Push them to a place and help them set goals that maybe they don't even think are possible. Like, there's this one girl on our team that I very specifically remember, and the month that we were going diamond, me and Alita called her up and we said, hey, guess what? You're going emerald this month. And on paper, it didn't make any sense. But she was in such high momentum, such good mindset space. And so we just helped her push the limits. And she was like, what are we doing? And I said, this is your emerald month. Like, you're hitting emerald and you're going to do it. And because our belief in her was so strong that she borrowed our belief and she believed that she could do it too. And sure enough, she hit it. And she has hit it like every single year since then. Okay. And so I say all of that when you see things in people, right? When you see things in your leaders, and maybe they're not willing to push that envelope and to run after something because it's scary, allow them to borrow your belief. Pour belief into them, empower them, encourage them to do those things, and lead the speed by what you're doing. Being willing to show up, being willing to be there, and taking things, okay, I promise this is the last thing I'll say. The things just keep coming to me. Take things off of your I'm unwilling to do list. Get that list down to next to nothing, and have the things that you are willing to do be so much bigger. And that's a lesson. While that was what I was doing at that time, I didn't necessarily know what it was called or how to word it that way, but that's something I learned in the book Build to Last. And he talks about how you need to, when you have this list of things in your mind, right? You might not necessarily have it written down, right? But you have this list of things. You're like, I'm unwilling to do this. I'm unwilling to do that. I'm unwilling to do this, right? You don't necessarily call it that, right? But when you can assess it, look at the things that you're not doing in your business, right? For whatever reason, when you can take those things off of that list and move them to, I'm willing to do this, even if it's just for a season, you will absolutely maximize growth, because there's almost nothing that you're saying, I'm not going to do, right? And I'm not saying throw every single boundary out the window. I'm not saying that, but for a season, just remember, short-term sacrifice, long-term gain. I promise you it is going to be worth it. So I'm really excited for you guys. I'm excited for you to be honest, to look intrinsically, to figure out what is going on so that then you can skyrocket to Sapphire and beyond.